Hey, I'm Meredith Rose. Welcome to Muse with Mary and a personal slant on the state of affairs, the search for the Holy Grail, and what's gone was already missing. This is such an upheaval that it's safe to say that the pandemic is not only based on a virus, it just can't be, and we know it. But grasping the thoughts, the feelings, and beliefs swirling in the world before we ground to a halt means forking back into the disarray of our failings. What's missing from the slew of virus narratives is the crossroads where we had already metaphorically drawn up our horses because we were completely lost in the terrain. Absentee backstory flowing down through time to us postmodern diehards is a legend about a kingdom that becomes a wasteland. It's ruled by a warlord or a king named Arthur. And as bleakness gathers, three of the knights of the Round Table behold the vision of a holy grail issuing from somewhere beyond this world. They ride out on horses to find this luminous object. In the Arthurian legend, it's tantalizingly unclear whether the Grail is an actual relic of the Christos or whether it's a cure for the wounds of the world or if it's a personal salvation for each knight. But if we ourselves as moderns didn't see ourselves in Arthur or the knight, it wouldn't be a legend anymore. So what does this tell us about what's missing in our lives now? Even in its beautiful ambiguity, doesn't the story suggest that the enlightenment or the cure begins with each of us? That our attempts to control the situation or repress it or rebel against it will not produce a grail. New day, new night. Not too long ago, there was an HBO series about an inverted hero, Tony Soprano, brilliantly portraying a degenerate mafioso who turns to psychiatry to save himself. And it would be a pretty wicked stretch to compare the chivalry of the knight to the code of the mob. But we don't have a handy cowboy or a private detective to symbolize today's knight errant. So let's use Tony, who does everything wrong, just to highlight the point of the wasteland and why he's relevant to the Grail. And the reality that we all see ourselves in Tony, at least to some degree. Now that may be because of the brilliant portrayal by the late James Gandolfino, but that's another subject. Tony realizes he's drowning and he needs help apart from his wife, Carmela, or more broadly, from Camelot. Those umbrellas of security only falsely protect him because of their own self-interest. So his me-first, power-driven world, the world that Tony himself has created, is destroying him. Why is it now so shitty? And is there a parallel between Carmela, Tony's wife, and Camelot, Arthur's kingdom, and our own institutions that only partly or not at all shelter us due to their own self-interests? Absence. The question is that all too harsh? Were we really at that nightmare level of Tony Soprano bad before the pandemic? Well, Tony never trusts if he will reach higher ground with his analyst, and viewers may have found themselves skeptical that the world is vastly better off after a century of psychiatry. But what's new to that gangster story is the fact that the anti-hero knows that he needs saving at all. Do we? I'm not suggesting that psychoanalysis is the equivalent of printing trillions of dollars, relying on vaccines and hyped up surveillance, but seriously trusting in those solutions. That trust may tip our story toward the fear and victimhood of our own creations that are overwhelming us to such a degree that we retreat and follow orders rather than riding out on our own horse. on our own journey, becoming who we are, i.e., the search for the Grail. Each knight knows the Grail is real. They must have known that it beckons from a reality beyond this world. So the old story gives us back to ourselves once again to freshly trace our own connection to the sacred. This is how the Arthurian legend tells us it must be. So if you find the Grail, if you have it, please bring it into the world. Till another time.